Radio Jackie, South West London.
I've got Molly Catford here with me. She's the mother of Nicholas Catford, who initially began Radio Jackie all those years ago. Would you like to tell me how Nicholas actually first started with his interest in radio, where that came from?
He's always been interested in radio, and he thought he'd like to build a transmitter and go on the air.
Right. How old was he when he had that idea?
I suppose he was about 15.
Right.
So he went to Sutton Manor High School. He was an 11 plus passer, and his hobby really was radio. He was crazy about it.
Yeah.
And he used to come home at lunchtime, and he'd built this transmitter, and he'd put it on, and he'd go out here, there, and everywhere on the air, and immediately the GPO would appear at the door.
So how did they track it down to you then?
I suppose it wasn't difficult in those days to track down a radio station.
Right.
If there was only one on. I don't think, Caroline was on, I think.
Yeah.
But not a lot of others. And, I was completely innocent. I said, no, I know nothing about it whatsoever. I don't know what you're talking about.
Did they fall for it?
Well, they couldn't really do anything else. They couldn't force their way in. They didn't force their way in.
Right.
And he used to go off the air, and he used to go back on his bike to school.
So he did this during his school days?
He did this during his school days. I suppose he was about 15 then.
So lunchtimes on air and then back to class again?
Lunchtimes on air. Well, of course, it was bound to be a bit of an eye-catcher, because for one of the boys to go back and broadcast, it was really something.
Yes, absolutely.
It was really rather exciting.
Yeah.
Well, he did that every day. And the GPO used to track him down very easily, very quickly. Well, there weren't many others, so they knew exactly where to go. I mean, they've got all the equipment to track them down.
Yeah.
And gradually more people listened, and so more people joined.
Right.
And then it became quite a big organisation.
So what steps did he take to actually sort of change it from just the one-man band to an actual radio?
Well, he took in other people. He just took in, it became a big thing. It just took in more people joined, more people wanted to do it. And then it became weekends, not just lunchtime.
Right. And was this all out of your house?
All out of my house. It all came out of my house. And they used to do their programs upstairs in the attic.
Yeah.
And I had to be very careful not to let Jack know they were there, which was very difficult.
Right. And Jack's your husband?
Jack's my husband, and Jack is against breaking the law.
Right.
So, although he sympathised with their cause, still had to be careful.
Really?
So, of course, they had to go upstairs very carefully in the loft, and they would make their programme for the Sunday, because they only broadcast on Sunday then.
Right.
And, so it became a way of life. And I used to take the phone calls for the requests.
Yeah.
And there used to be a lot of advertising coming in, a vast amount of advertising.
Really?
And they became a very popular station. Yes, they were. And they raised a lot of money for charity. Terrific amount. For instance, one bloke sat in a bath of custard in a shop window.
Really?
For days on end. Yes, and people donated money.
Really? That's fantastic.
Strange.
Yeah.
Sit in a bath of custard.
I know, well.
But he did.
It grabs the attention.
Yes, he grabbed the attention.
Yeah.
But it was, it was very interesting, and I loved it, and I loved them all because they were so nice.
Yeah.
And there was no violence.
Yeah.
No violence of it. There was never any violence.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you say it was the GPO which used to come after them to try and shut them down.
Yes.
Were the police ever really involved with
Not at all.
them? I mean, did he have run-ins with the law?
No, not really. No, as I said, there was one policeman in Sutton who used to warn them that they were going to come out and look for them. No.
So that they
there
were
was
not
no
too
violence
concerned.
attached to it
Yeah.
whatsoever.
Yeah.
There were no guns. It was just a protest. That there should be more chance for free radio, and it should not just be Luxembourg and I think a couple of other
BBC.
stations, but there should be a choice,
Yeah,
people's choice.
yeah. So Nicholas was obviously clearly committed to.
Oh, he was absolutely committed,
Yeah.
completely and utterly. Yes.
So you told me earlier that Nicholas actually had to go and spend some time in prison.
He spent 28 days in prison. Well, he was doing this job that I told you before, that they used to have little kiosks at various sections, at various roads, on the main roads, and they used to monitor the cars,
Right, yeah.
which was a thing they did then, I don't
Yeah.
know, and they got £3.50, I think, for doing this, and he had to go to court because he was caught and he had to go to court.
Right.
I think he went to Kingston, and he said to his father, he said, will you do my job for me if I go inside? Not think he would, and he did. He got 28 days.
Really?
And as I said, he spent a long time writing letters for people who couldn't write
Yeah.
and read, and he also was in charge of food, so I loved that because he was a big eater. And when he came out, he was most impressed. We met him at Pentonville at the gates,
Yeah.
and they gave him money, his fare home, and some spending money. And he said he was treated extremely well.
Really? Yeah.
He used to write to me from prison, and we tried to send a radio into him, but they wouldn't accept that.
Right.
But it went on all the time he was inside. It never
Really?
stopped.
That's fantastic.
No, it never stopped at all.
That's fantastic.
In fact, it never stopped over the 25 years.
It
It was always on.
So Molly, tell me what happened after Nicholas actually came out of prison. I mean,
Well,
how did it affect?
When he came out of prison, he went on doing exactly what he did before he went in.
Right. So it
didn't
made no
make
difference to him.
Any difference at all, except he was very popular. He'd suffered for
So-
his art.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And people
Didn't make any
responded to that.
difference at all.
And what did Jack feel about the prison
Well,
issue?
Jack, again, you see, he's not a lawbreaker,
No.
and he was very sympathetic to the fact that he went to prison to meet him and he came out.
So Molly, what do you think? We've talked a lot about the past and where it came from. What do you think about what's happened today, the relaunch and the future now for Radio Jackie? What's your thoughts?
Well, I think they've achieved what they set out to do in the first place. They've got freedom of choice without violence.
Yeah,
And
totally.
they're doing it lawfully. They've got a licence, and I know you've got to regulate. You've got to have you've got to regulate who's broadcasting where and on what, and it mustn't come on any of the emergency services. So
Yeah.
I know you've got to look out for what you're doing, and you have got to be given a licence to say, yes, it's okay, you can go on that wavelength.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think there's any wrong in that at all.
No, no.
But I think it's just very sad. It's taken all this time to get where it is.
I know. It's been a long haul for them.
It's been a long route, but I'm sure that they feel very proud of what they achieved.
Certainly.
And of course, so much is down to Tony.
Yeah, yeah.
You see, that is fantastic. I mean, so much is down to Tony and all the boys who were involved.
Mm.
And I mean, there's such a crowd of them have come today, and
Must be a bit like
Mind
a
you,
reunion.
it must also have been a lot of fun.
Yes. Oh, they wouldn't be doing it if they didn't have fun,
you
would
see,
they?
it was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
They were having a ball,
yeah, yeah.
and it perhaps was much more fun when it was illegal. There was more excitement to it, I
Yeah.
expect.
Yeah.
I'm sure there was. I'm sure it was more fun.
Yeah, that must have been one of the reasons they enjoyed it back then.
Yes, I
Yeah.
think so. And of course, they were all young.
Yeah, yeah.
It was all, you know.
Yeah, well, all that remains to be said, I suppose, is to wish them luck for the future.
Yes.
And thank you very much as
You're
well
very
for telling me
welcome.
all about the where it came from and all those
You're
stories.
welcome.
It's been lovely.
There you are. There's Jack.
Hello.
Hello, Jack.
No, hello.
I'm one of the lucky ones. I stagger about, but I'm 93 years old.
Fantastic. Right, do you want to come and have a seat over here?
You're right.
Yes, yes.
Come and flunk yourself down. You take his coat off for him.
No, that's fine.
Give him a coat. That's it, Jack. There you go.
Yeah.
Sit back you go. Sit down.
All right,
That's it.
ready?
That's it. There you go.
That's it.
That's it.
Right, comfy?
Yes.
Right, I'm here with Jack Catford now, Nicholas's father, who's going to give me the other side of the story. Now, when Nicholas was about 15, is that right?
Yes.
He started to begin to experiment with making transmitters and doing some broadcasts. Now, what did you feel about that when he began to get into broadcasting?
Well, because basically I'm a law-abiding man, I was a bit worried about it. I wasn't all that keen.
Right,
But unknown to him, I admired them all for what they were doing.
right.
I thought it was a great thing to do, you know.
Yes, yes.
But I tended to ignore them. In fact, for a long time, I wasn't even aware that they were using my house as a studio. They were up in the loft.
Right.
The loft, incidentally, is still full of memorabilia
Is it?
from the late 60s and 70s. Oh, yes.
From when they were doing the show from there.
That's right, yes, yeah.
Well, it must have taken some some bottle to actually be creeping around the house behind your back for such a long time.
Oh, yes.
It was,
It was quite a long time before I realised that they were making broadcasts from my house, which, because of my feelings at that time,
yeah.
that was the last thing I would have agreed to willingly, you know, the very last thing. I mean, as it happened in due course, they moved away from the house. They still worked on the house, but they were broadcasting from various places in the open,
Right.
aerials strung up in the trees and so on. And they used to take all their gear down in a pram to the nearest open spot.
Right.
And then
Okay.
set it up.
And set it up from there.
Yes, yes, yes.
So it was a real mobile radio.
Oh, yes, really mobile in the early days, always.
So what happened when you actually found out that they were doing the broadcasts?
Well,
from the
I
house?
didn't want to know, officially that is. I wasn't very pleased about it. Possibly, if it had been away from my house all the time, I wouldn't have been objected so much. But because at that time they were using my house as an illegal broadcasting station, I was rather fed up and I said, I don't want to know.
Right.
And very largely I didn't. I never interfered with them.
So you agreed to
Yeah,
turn a blind eye?
Oh
did
yes,
you?
which is exactly, that's
Right.
exactly what I did.
Right.
Yes.
As long as you couldn't see it,
Yeah.
It wasn't
I
so
couldn't
bad.
see it, it didn't
it didn't exist.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
fair enough. That's
Yeah.
fair. So, because Nicholas actually went to prison at one stage, Molly was telling
Yes, well, he'd already been fined many times, and eventually, what turned out to be, I suppose, a real boost for their thing, he was, to set an example, that instead of a fine, he was sent to prison for a month.
me. Right.
During which time he was fully occupied writing letters home for prisoners who couldn't read or write.
Yeah, that's a lot. What a great thing to do with your time if you're going to be there, though. I mean, were you worried when you found he was going to have to go?
Well, not really. I thought all along, I thought he was inevitable. If he was the unlucky one, I knew sooner or later somebody was going to be sent to prison as an example.
Yes.
Which, of course, is what he was. Well, he didn't do any good, really, because they were just as keen to carry on when he came out of prison.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. It sometimes can sort of put it the other way round. Instead of making a bad
yes.
example, it actually does good for the reputation.
Yes,
and
yes, I quite agree, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what happened after that when he came out?
Well, after that, they carried on as before. They changed their broadcasting sites. They were nearly always in the open, in local around the south, the North Downs, and in local parks even, and
Yeah.
any open space. They go along there with their pram in the morning with all the gear in it. Having put the aerial up from a tree, possibly the night before, they would do
Yeah.
their broadcast as before.
Yeah.
They didn't stop at all.
Yeah.
Oh yes,
Very interesting life it must have been back then.
you could call it that.
So, Jack, if you would, tell me what you feel about today. What's happened today with the relaunch and for the future of Radio Jackie?
Oh, right, quite fantastic. Oh yes, now that it's all legal, they couldn't find anybody more enthusiastic about it.
Than yourself.
And my son, who started it all, is on the air this afternoon in point of fact at 4 o'clock.
Right.
Nicholas, whose radio name is Mike Knight, as it was way back in the early days.
Right.
They each had their thing. He started off, and I'm all for it now. Now that it's it's legal now. It was semi-legal earlier on when they opened the station at Worcester Park, when Tony came into it and ran
Right.
the station. But
Right.
I'm all for it. Yes. After all, if you don't want to listen to them, you don't tune in.
So exactly. They're not forcing you.
Yes. I mean, hopefully I might hear some of the music that I really enjoyed
Yeah.
in the 60s and 70s, which I still hear on radio occasionally. Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
yes.
Well, keep listening, I suppose, and maybe one day you will. Well, thanks very much, Jack. It's been lovely talking to you.
That's right.
Finding out a few
You're very
stories.
welcome. I never thought this day would come when it was so legal that I would be interviewed about it. But
I
I'm
know.
very thrilled and very glad to have a chat with you.
Yeah, well, it's been lovely.
Right.
Thanks very much.
Right.